Isabel Porter wiped down the espresso machine at Riverside Café, her apron dusted with flour from the morning's baking. The autumn sun streamed through the large industrial windows, casting warm light across the exposed brick walls. Her daughter, 4-year-old Lily, sat at a corner table with her coloring books, humming softly to herself. It was their routine. Isabel worked the early shift, and Lily came with her, content to color and snack on leftover muffins until preschool started at 9. The cafe owner, Mrs. Yang, didn't mind. She said Lily brought good energy to the place, that customers smiled more when they saw the little girl's pigtails bobbing behind the counter. Isabel had been working at the cafe for 2 years, ever since her husband died in a construction accident. The insurance money had barely covered the funeral costs, and she'd been left with a mountain of medical debt from his final weeks in the hospital. The cafe job didn't pay much, but it was honest work, and it allowed her to keep Lily close. "Mama, can I have juice?" Lily called out, not looking up from her careful coloring of a butterfly. "In a minute." "Sweetheart," Isabel replied, finishing up with a customer's latte. The morning rush had died down, leaving the cafe in that peaceful lull between breakfast and lunch. Isabel was just thinking about taking a short break when the door opened and a man walked in. He was striking in a way that made people look twice. Tall, with dark hair swept back from his face, wearing a charcoal coat over a dark sweater that probably cost more than Isabel's monthly rent. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a deep blue that seemed to carry some weight of sadness or searching. "Good morning," Isabel said with her professional smile. "What can I get for you?" The man approached the counter, pulling out his phone to check something. "Large Americano black, and whatever pastry you'd recommend. The apple turnovers are fresh from this morning," Isabel suggested. "I made them myself." He looked up from his phone then, really looking at her for the first time. "You made them?" "I do all the baking here," Isabel said with quiet pride. "It's my favorite part of the job." "Then I'll trust your recommendation," he said, and his smile softened his entire face. As Isabel prepared his order, she was aware of him watching her work with an attention that felt different from the usual customer impatience. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, just intense. She handed him his coffee and pastry, and he moved to a table by the window, opening his laptop. Isabel returned to her tasks, trying not to notice how he seemed to fit into the cafe's atmosphere despite his obvious wealth, how he savored the turnover with genuine appreciation. "Mama," Lily's voice cut through her thoughts, unusually loud and excited. Isabel turned to see her daughter standing up from her table, pointing directly at the man by the window. Her small face was alight with wonder and something like recognition. "Mama, that's him," Lily said, her voice carrying across the quiet cafe. "That's the man from my dream." The cafe seemed to freeze. The man looked up from his laptop, his eyes going wide. Isabel felt her face flush with embarrassment. "Lily, honey, you can't just point at people," Isabel said, hurrying over to her daughter. "I'm so sorry, sir." She has a very active imagination, but Lily wasn't backing down. She walked right up to the man's table with the fearless confidence of a 4-year-old, looking up at him with solemn brown eyes. "I've been dreaming about you," Lily said matter-of-factly. "You were sad in my dreams. You were looking for something you lost." The man's face had gone pale. He stared at Lily as if she'd spoken in a language he'd forgotten he knew. "Lily, that's enough," Isabel said, gently taking her daughter's hand. "I'm so sorry, sir. She's been having very vivid dreams lately. I don't know where she comes up with these things." "What else did you dream?" the man asked quietly, his voice rough with emotion. He was looking at Lily with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow wasn't. Lily tilted her head, considering. "You were standing in a big empty house and you were calling for someone named Emma. You were crying." The coffee cup slipped from the man's hand, clattering against the saucer. His face had gone from pale to ashen. "How could you possibly know that name?" he whispered. Isabel felt a chill run down her spine. "Sir, I really am sorry." "Lily, come back to your table right now." But the man held up a hand, his eyes never leaving Lily's face. "No, please. I need to understand this." He looked up at Isabel, and she saw tears gathering in his eyes. "Emma was my daughter. She died 2 years ago. She was 5 years old. The world seemed to tilt. Isabel sat down heavily in the chair across from him, pulling Lily onto her lap. "I'm so sorry," Isabel breathed. "I had no idea. Lily couldn't have known." "I know she couldn't," the man said, his voice shaking. "That's what makes this so impossible. I was just at Emma's grave this morning. It's her birthday today. She would have been 7. I went to the cemetery before dawn, and I did exactly what your daughter described. I stood there calling her name and crying because the grief never gets easier, it just gets quieter." Lily reached out and patted the man's hand with her small one. "She wants you to know she's okay," Lily said with the simple certainty children sometimes have about inexplicable things. "She says you need to stop being so sad. She says you're supposed to help people, like you wanted to before she got sick." The man let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "I was going to start a foundation. Before Emma got sick, I was planning to use my company's resources to help families dealing with childhood illness. But after she died, I couldn't. I just couldn't face it." "What's your name?" Isabel asked softly. "Julian," he said. "Julian Ashford." Isabel's eyes widened slightly. She recognized the name now. Ashford Technologies was one of the largest companies in the state. Julian Ashford was a billionaire, a titan of industry, someone so far removed from her world that they might as well live on different planets. "I'm Isabel," she said, "and this is Lily." "Hello, Lily," Julian said, his voice gentle. "Can you tell me anything else about your dreams?" Lily was quiet for a moment, her small face scrunched in concentration. "Emma says you're lonely. She says you work all the time because you don't want to go home to the empty house. She says you need to find the people who need you." Julian's hands were shaking as he reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He took out a photograph worn at the edges from handling and showed it to Lily. "Is this Emma?" he asked. Lily looked at the photo of a small girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile, then nodded seriously. "That's her. She's very pretty. She wants you to know she's not sick anymore. She's happy now." Julian broke down then, his shoulders shaking with sobs he'd probably been holding back for 2 years. Isabel found herself reaching across the table to take his hand. This stranger, who was suddenly not a stranger at all, connected to them by something neither of them could explain. Mrs. Yang came out from the kitchen, took one look at the scene, and quietly locked the cafe door, turning the sign to closed. Some moments were too sacred for regular business hours. Over the next hour, Julian told them about Emma, about her love of butterflies and chocolate chip pancakes, about how she'd been brave through treatments that would have broken most adults, about how losing her had shattered him so completely that he'd spent 2 years just going through the motions of living. "I built my company into an empire," Julian said, his coffee long cold in front of him. "I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But I'd trade it all, every penny, every achievement, for 5 more minutes with my daughter." "I understand," Isabel said quietly. "My husband died 2 years ago. Some days I still wake up and forget he's gone, reach for him in the bed and find empty space." Julian looked at her with new recognition, seeing perhaps a kindred spirit in grief. "How do you keep going?" Isabel looked down at Lily, who had gone back to her coloring but was listening to every word. She keeps me going. She reminds me every day that life is still worth living, that there's still beauty and joy to be found." "Emma used to say things," Julian said slowly, "things she couldn't possibly have known. She told me once that her grandmother was visiting her in the hospital room, even though my mother had died before Emma was born. She described her perfectly, down to the perfume she used to wear. Some children are sensitive to things we don't understand," Isabel said. "Lily has been having these dreams for about a month now. She talks about a man who's sad, who needs help remembering how to be happy. I thought she was talking about her father, about her own memories, but now I wonder." Julian looked at Lily with something like wonder. "Would you let me do something? Would you let me help you? Both of you?" Isabel stiffened. "We're not charity cases." "That's not what I meant," Julian said quickly. "I mean, let me be part of your lives. Let me learn from you how to live again." Lily opened a door I thought was closed forever. "And Isabel, you understand this grief in a way most people can't. I've been so isolated in my pain that I forgot there were other people out there carrying similar weights. What exactly are you suggesting? Isabel asked carefully. I'm suggesting that maybe we were supposed to meet today, Julian said. I don't know if I believe in fate or messages from beyond or any of it, but I know that I came into this cafe planning it to be my last public appearance. I was going to go home after this and end things. I couldn't face another year of this emptiness. Isabel's breath caught. Julian. But your daughter knew my daughter's name, Julian continued. She knew things she couldn't possibly have known. And sitting here with you both, I feel something I haven't felt in 2 years. I feel hope, just a flicker of it, but it's there. Lily looked up from her coloring then and climbed off her mother's lap. She walked around the table and hugged Julian, her small arms barely reaching around him. Emma says you're going to be okay now, Lily whispered. She says we're supposed to help you and you're supposed to help us too. Julian held the little girl gently, carefully, as if she were made of something precious and fragile. When he looked up at Isabel, his eyes were clear for the first time since he'd walked into the cafe. Will you let me try? He asked. Will you let me be part of this impossible, inexplicable thing that's happening here? Isabel thought about all the practical reasons to say no. Thought about the vast differences between their worlds, about the strangeness of the situation, about protecting her daughter from complicated entanglements. But she also thought about the weight she'd been carrying alone for 2 years, about how Lily lit up around this sad man who needed kindness, about the mystery of dreams and connections that defied explanation. We can try, she said finally, but slowly and carefully. Slowly and carefully, Julian agreed. Over the months that followed, Julian became a regular fixture at Riverside Café. He funded renovations that turned it into something special while keeping its heart intact. He set up college funds for Lily and the children of the other staff. But more than that, he became family. He taught Lily about science and took her to museums. He helped Isabel expand her baking into a small side business. And they helped him remember how to laugh, how to find joy in simple moments, how to honor Emma's memory by living fully rather than merely existing. A year after their first meeting, Julian finally started the foundation he'd dreamed of, naming it Emma's Light. Isabel joined him as co-director, bringing her understanding of what struggling families actually needed. Together, they helped hundreds of families facing childhood illness, offering financial support, emotional resources, and the kind of hope that only people who've survived darkness can truly provide. And sometimes, late at night, Lily would tell them about her dreams. About a little girl with dark curls who was happy now, who watched over them all and smiled. Julian never quite knew whether to believe in the supernatural or to chalk it up to remarkable coincidence. But he knew that walking into a small cafe on what he'd planned to be his last day had somehow saved his life. That a 4-year-old girl with an impossible knowledge of his grief had given him a reason to keep living. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some connections transcend explanation. And sometimes, the people we need most find us in the most unexpected ways, speaking words we didn't know we needed to hear, offering hope we'd given up on finding. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that hope can find us in the darkest moments through unexpected connections, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about healing, inexplicable bonds, and the mysterious ways love transcends loss. Comment below about a time when something unexplainable gave you comfort or changed your path. Sometimes the universe speaks to us in whispers through the most unlikely messengers.